Good afternoon and welcome to the Three Deeper Cuts podcast, your lifestyle magazine for the practicing surgical pathologist. I am your host, Chuck G. Every week we bring you something to think about, something to read, or something to listen to. Three Deeper Cuts is brought to you by Formalin Fixed Paraffin Embedded Tissue. Emphasis on the formalin, because without the high exposure to 10% buffered neutral formalin that we were exposed to during our 4 years of residency in St. Louis, we wouldn't be able to bring you half of the crazy things that show up on Three Deeper Cuts Publishing. And if you're not a pathologist and you're listening to this right now, thank you for your support and welcome. Couple of announcements for today. Coming up on spring down here in Texas. It's a good life. Once you live down here for a while, I recommend the further south, the better. You're not going to want to go back up north, honestly. I can't even remember the last time I flew north of north of the Pecos River. There you go. I don't know. So I did want to read you something. This is a little excerpt from a publication called Laboratory Economics, the February issue. LDT regulation will raise costs and harm patients. So LDT stands for laboratory developed tests. So these are lab tests that are developed in-house at a particular lab. And this is an interesting survey that they did of lab professionals across the country. So 48% responded that it will. So the question is, how will FDA regulation of LDTs affect your laboratory? 48% said it will raise our lab costs. 39% say patient care will be harmed. 36% say we will send out more tests to our reference lab. 34% say turnaround time for test results will increase. 33%, that's a really important one, actually. That means more anxiety, more waiting for families with a new cancer diagnosis or a medical illness that requires a lab diagnosis. We will drop low-volume LDTs, so 33% said that. 25% said minimal, no impact, and 12% said it will make lab testing more accurate and safer. Okay, and skip ahead. So this publication is put out by an analyst by the name of John David Klipp. Again, this is volume 19, February 2024. Okay, so this paragraph says, low test volumes and budget constraints have always been the biggest barriers that labs face when determining if they can add an esoteric test to their in-house test menu. However, the FDA's proposed rule to regulate LDTs, the final rule is due in April, is already impacting lab decision-making. 43% of survey respondents said forthcoming FDA regulation is among the biggest barriers they face in expanding their esoteric testing menu. Here's a quote from a pathologist at a large academic medical center in Illinois. Quote, we would just not be able to launch any LDTs due to cost. There would be no purpose to have a cutting-edge lab that is supposed to integrate new scientific findings into diagnosis. The lab would close. Next quote. The cost will increase tremendously and availability of testing will diminish. The impact is higher cost, lower quality, so a tremendously negative impact on value, said a pathologist at an academic medical center in Rhode Island. Next is FDA regulation will completely disrupt IHC staining and most full-service anatomic pathology labs, noted a lab executive from Washington. However, there was a minority of survey participants in favor of FDA regulation. So just, by the way, so just for the layperson, where do laboratory tests get regulated? Currently, they fall under CLIA, which is a overarching regulatory act that covers all aspects of lab testing. Okay, so these next people say, regulation of LDTs is long overdue. There is a nexus between the worst behaviors in clinical labs and LDTs, said a pathologist from New York City. And then the FDA should regulate LDT testing ASAP. The current self-certification process has minimal oversight. And goes on faith that there aren't bad actors. There are a number of pop-up CLIA labs offering bogus molecular assays that should be regulated, said a hospital lab director from California. Interesting. So, okay, let's skip ahead. I start a couple other sections of this. So here's a question here. What is the estimated cost for labs to comply with FDA regulation of LDTs? The cost to develop an FDA-compliant quality management systems, develop more validation data for each LDT, and pay FDA application fees could easily range between $1 and $2 million for each moderate risk test and well over $3 million per high-risk test. Labs with novel tests should expect higher compliance costs even for moderate risk tests. Okay, so let's moving on. So yeah, bottom line is that this is a hotly controversial issue. But if you look at the people that support FDA regulation of tests, I mean, it's all the large corporate actors with very deep pockets where money is really not a factor. And I think this is part of the industry trend to circumvent the lab and circumvent the pathologist and the lab director, and basically come up with your own tests without having to go through the lab. I think that's the common theme of what happens when you leave non-physicians in charge. They just want to go. They want to go straight to their revolving door, and this is an issue that is going to affect all of us. So our president of our College of American Pathologists, he was testifying before Congress on this issue, and it's going to be a big deal. So anyways, you should check out this publication. It's called Laboratory Economics. And again, I'm learning about this as I go. Most of my colleagues, we're so busy in the trenches of day-to-day practice that we don't even think about this stuff until it's too late. The other issue down the pipeline is that this last weekend was the Pathologist Leadership Summit, which is run by our professional organization. And honestly, every practicing pathologist should contribute to our political action committee or learn more about it. Obviously, I can't solicit anything like that on this podcast because there's non-pathologists that listen to this. That's not what I'm doing. I'm just saying that you should be aware of this because you're going up against killers, these big oncology testing companies, pharmaceutical industry, hospital industry. You're going up against people who may not always have the patient's best interest in mind. They have their corporate interests in mind, how to maximize their bottom line. So you, the physician, are pretty much the only thing in between that. And the other critically important reason you have to get involved with physician-led advocacy is that we need to have small physician-owned practices. That's the best way to practice medicine. The more you employ physicians and the more you turn medicine into a faceless bureaucracy or corporation, you just water down and commodify the care. Even back here in the lab doing surgical pathology, the skill set is highly nuanced. And absolutely, it should remain a lucrative profession because these skills, learning how to diagnose tumors and learning how to manage a lab, it's a complex skill set that very few people can do. And we want to continue attracting the best and brightest into this field. But we need to be paid what we're worth. And my friend who's going to be on this podcast today, Dr. Sam, is all about that. So Sam is a good friend of mine from Residency. He spent some time in private practice in the Midwest, and he recently switched back into academia for a variety of factors, which he'll explain to you. But Sam's got an interesting life story. He helped his group optimize their billing. There was a lot of underbilling going on, and the reason is that a lot of pathologists, including myself, you're never trained on how to optimize your billing, but it's critically important to maintain the viability of your practice. So knowing which codes correspond to which type of specimens, and a lot of the times it's just about documentation. Like there's key aspects of the clinical history and the surgical description that have to make it into the pathology report at some point. Otherwise, you just won't get paid for the work that took you hours to complete. So without further ado, let me just get right into it. This is going to be a great conversation with Dr. Sam. Here we go.
And so I was like, I got to go to work. You wanted money. You want to go do things. You know, we weren't poor, but like we weren't well off. Like I grew up in a trailer park for 18 years. So I was like, parents got me a car, and I was like, I was expected to contribute to the payments of those cars and insurance and the like. And so like to do that, you needed to work, right? And so I had no skills, and you're a 16-year-old kid. So you go what's available, and that was what's available. And I mean, I think the first time you got to clean a toilet as a job, like the bathroom, it's kind of an eye-opening experience. Like you probably, like at that age, I probably would have been cleaning the toilet at my house. Yeah. Right? And now you got to clean a toilet that's not even what you use. So that it kind of like, okay, you see different people from different walks of life and coming through. And I kept trying to find something else, but it took a long time to find something else. And I was stuck in that mentality that if I stay at this job for a long time, people will notice that. And this is a good theme to bridge upon. Loyalty at an employer that doesn't value you.
Interesting.
Is an old concept. Our fathers grew up with that. Our grandfathers grew up with that. But I don't think it's the case anymore. And you hear a lot these days, if you want to make more money or you want to get a promotion, you got to be willing to move around. Sometimes that's true, sometimes it's not. So I stayed at that place because at the time, why did I stay at Kentucky Fried Chicken for almost 2 years? I was like, well, they're going to value that I'm not just going from job to job. But nobody really valued that. I put applications in other places after 1 year and nobody was hitting. This telemarketing place had such a high turnover. That's the only reason I went out there. And I wasn't very good when I was started. I had to, you have to, there's a lot of psychology involved. You have to use your voice. It was the job that taught me that words have a lot of value. Spoken word has a lot of value. Learning how to speak and controlling your tone, your volume, your speed. If you can match some of those to the people that you talk to, you can become more receptive, or your message can be more receptive. So I learned a lot of skills in telemarketing, but unfortunately, I couldn't continue that job while in college, and so I had to leave that job. And then I just, when I got into college, I started taking my academic career more seriously, and so I started finding ways to kind of supplement that and spend more time and energy into pursuing that endeavor.
Okay. So from an early age, you were finding other ways to work and to provide an income to your family and to help yourself. Did that continue through college? So what were you doing on the side in college?
So in college, I did tutoring, which was very minimum wage, but I developed a tutoring program to assist non-traditional students. These are mostly nursing students, pass their prerequisite courses for the nursing programs. Many of these women were coming out of, and they were mostly women, but there were some guys, but mostly women. But I would say like 90% of them were women. They were non-traditional students who were coming out of a divorce or bad situation, and they were trying to get a nursing degree so they can get their finances back under their feet and they take care of their family. And they were having trouble specifically with the more rigorous science courses of biology, chemistry, and et cetera, anatomical, anatomy and physiology. And they were having trouble with those courses to get into nursing school. So they were just washing out. And they were really dedicated, driven people, like driven students, but they just had been out of school too long. And some of these classes were just a little too rigorous. But once you put them on the right path, once you got them up to speed, they were knocking it out. And so I developed all these mock tests and whatever. And the college actually, because it was a community college, and college actually gave me an award for developing all these programs and helping these people get into nursing school a little bit easier, a little bit quicker than they probably could on their own. And so the other way that I did things to try to supplement my income is during the summers, I would go off and do research at a more higher ranked institution, and they would give me a stipend. Now this stuff, I wasn't killing it, like I think I argued with my mother with the first summer, like I could go offshore and do some RUDMEF work for like $10,000-$15,000. And, I guess if you listen to some financial advisors, I probably should have did that. But I decided to put my investment in a different area. So I was going to places like Harvard and Yale. And actually the first program I went to was University of Arkansas Medical Sciences in Little Rock. But these places would give me a little bit of pocket money while really giving me the opportunity to excel in a rigorous science program.
Okay. So you started to dabble in research in undergrad.
Mm-hmm.
Now, so you eventually got into medical school, but where along the line did you realize that you wanted to be in the laboratory?
Like in pathology laboratory or just laboratories?
In pathology.
Oh, that was very late. So I had no idea what pathology was, even though I spent a lot of time around in research labs doing wet lab or bench work. I had no idea what a surgical or anatomical pathology was. I had no concept of that. I was very fortunate to go to a very strong medical school, and they had a very strong second year pathology program, and that still didn't hook me, because when you're going through your studies, like everything's just coming at you at such a high volume and speed, you're not really getting a real taste of what they do. So I would say the first time I was in almost the end of my third year in medical school, and I had no idea what type of physician I wanted to be.
Wow.
And I had a roommate who was in the military doing military medicine, and he was always very, very much like a military person. He was like, "Do you know what you're going to do yet, Franks?" And then he was my roommate, and I said, "No, Mike, I don't know what I'm going to do yet." And he goes, "Well, you need to get to know something. You're time to pick it." And I'm like, "Thank you, Mike." And he goes, "You like this science stuff. You ever thought about pathology?" And I said, I really haven't. He goes, "Well, you need to get to know." I said, "I don't know anything about pathology." He goes, "Well, you need to get to know." His answer was like that for everything. It was annoying, but I appreciated his assertiveness and his, so I did. Like, I was like, maybe he has a point. Sometimes like you're just such on a track in med school that you can't, it's hard for you to see what you need to do. Sometimes somebody next to you, like, maybe you should go that way. Like, that's maybe a good route for you. So I had no, other than the professor who taught us second year pathology courses, I had no contact. So doing my typical thing, and this is kind of a story in a trend in my life. I always have had to like just almost cold contact people. Okay. So I cold contacted like a super famous pathologist, and I could recognize that, this gentleman was like outperforming people in his field. He had a reputation. He had papers. He had prestige. He had clout. He had all these things. And I just cold contacted him. And I was like, I want to do research with you, and these are my credentials. And I had enough credentials to be like, okay, maybe this guy's serious, right? And that's where some of those previous experiences kind of helped me out. And I remember telling him, I said, I want to do research with you. And at the end of our research experience, I would very much for you to write a letter of recommendation for residency in pathology if you're willing. And he just right here goes, oh, whoa. He was like, you're moving too fast. But that was always my personality. I'm a very assertive person. I'm a very direct person. I know that I'm going to give you a solid work ethic and a solid product at the end of my interaction. So that wasn't a concern for me. I had no idea that this gentleman was actually equally humble as he was intelligent and well-known. And we worked on a good project together, and I presented it at USCAP my first year as a resident. And I had just moved back. I had just got my first job, and within a couple months of me getting my first job, I get a phone call from this guy putting me on the paper from the project from like 6 years ago.
Wow.
And I hadn't worked on the project in 5 years. And I do not think I really earned an authorship position, but he was gracious enough to still think of me and consider me and put me on there. So I think, there's things like this, like you kind of stumble into people's path. You have to be prepared to do the work. And then sometimes you get very lucky or fortuitous in the type of people you meet that they do things like that.
No, absolutely, man. You have to embrace that serendipity, but it takes the boldness that you described.
Oh, I'm nothing if I'm not bold.
You got to. That's why I wanted you on 3 Deeper Cuts, because I think that's a very positive message to the young medical student. That medicine is structured. There's a way to get forward, but that doesn't mean that it's the perfect job for you. And if you wind up in the wrong job, that could be bad for your health. It could be bad for your family. So you got to lean forward and you got to explore the options yourself. No one's going to do it for you. And the payout at the end of that is that you're the captain of your own ship. Like you acquire these experiences that make you more marketable.
You have to try to maintain your marketability. You have to cultivate it. These are all things that sound good, like, right? They're kind of kitschy or cliche, but I've always been a very assertive and bold person. Now, with that, there are times that I have been too bold and have suffered setbacks or, et cetera. You got to be willing to take the good with the bad. And I feel like that's what prevents people a lot of times from being bold, is that they're not really willing to take a hit sometimes.
Got you. Okay. So you gotta be willing to take a couple L's. Could you, you don't got to get into the nitty gritty if you don't want to, but could you give a teaching example of how maybe your boldness got you into a little bit of hot water and you had to get your way out of it?
Sure. This one goes way back. We'll start. I'll give you 2. We'll start with one. They're in chronological order. So I got an NIH supplement grant. This is around the time of Hurricane Katrina and Rita, because I remember the water trucks coming down I-49 to heading towards New Orleans. I had just finished my last summer research. I was actually at Yale University doing a summer research program. And I was working on an NIH supplement grant to go to one of the medical centers and do research at a med school in the state of Louisiana. And my strategy for that, and I feel like this, you always have to have a strategy. You always got to be working towards a strategy. So my strategy was, I'm at a community college currently. I'm not at the flagship LSU in Baton Rouge. I need to be on a better playing field of competition, but I just didn't have the financial resources to do so. So my thought was, I had talked to a few people. I'm going to get an NIH supplement grant. this is money that they're going to attach to an existing R1 grant. For people who don't know, those are big deals. They're 6-7 figure grants. And I was going to support myself through these research efforts year round while finishing up my bachelor's degree, because I had almost completely finished. I only needed like three semesters, right? Yeah. So I was going to transfer up to Shreveport because New Orleans had just got hit by the hurricane. They underwater,
right?
And nobody going to school down there. My buddy was in dental school. He's finishing up his dental school on a cruise ship. So ain't nobody was down there, so I had to go to the opposite end of the boot, up there in the northwest corner of Texarkana, and I was able to get that. But that was an uncommon situation, and this is what I mean by bold. I cold contacted the department chair at the time, and I presented him with this proposal. And I always liked doing this. Wherever I did research, I was free. Wherever I went, I said, I am free and I'm going to work for you. And this is the product that you're going to get. I'm good in the lab. I'm free. And I might even make you money because you might get extra money to support me or whatever. Well, that's exactly what I was doing. That's a unique situation. There's not very many people that did that in undergrad, right? But if you could always bring that to the table, you look different. Well, but sometimes when you look different, people don't know what to do with you. You're coming out of the gate too hot. So there was an issue early on with how much they were going to pay me. Now, remember, I'm moving out on my own for the first time. I needed to get paid $10 an hour just to hope to stay afloat. And the grant said I could get paid up to $10 an hour. So your boy was aiming for $10 an hour.
That was a lot, right? Back then.
That was a lot, because we thought minimum wage back then in Louisiana was $5.15.
Right.
The research department there was like, we don't pay undergraduates. We don't pay undergraduates any more than $5.15 an hour. I'm like, well, who's paying me? You're not paying me, so I shouldn't be able to have to go by your rules. So now you look special, right?
Yep.
But I didn't talk to them like that. I just started asking people questions. Who's paying me? Well, I asked somebody, and then I asked somebody at NIH through a contact that I had at NIH. They said, just ask them this and try to see if you can clear it up. Well, let me tell you, Chuck, that was the worst thing I could have done, but didn't know it.
Okay.
I asked somebody about money.
Ooh.
Okay. And I got called up by this guy that I was supposed to go in his lab. It wasn't even the chair of the department, because he had delegated the chewing out to this guy. You ever get well, you were in the military a little bit. You ever get your chewing out delegated? Like, they ain't even worth chewing you out. They got it delegated and have somebody chew you out. That's what happened to me.
Special level of humiliation.
So I'm at Yale. I'm in New Haven, Connecticut, on my way to the lab one morning, and I get a phone call from this guy. This guy's a great guy, by the way. He's hey, we're still close and stuff. So this guy gives me a call. He doesn't know me, and I don't know him very well. And he goes, "What is going on?" And I said, "What you talking about?" And he said, "Well, I just got a phone call that says you're asking about money and blah, blah. I don't think you really know what you're doing, and you don't know this." And I had to press pause on homeboy. I had to time out. So I was like, "Hey, let me just stop you right there." I said, we don't have to do any of this. And he's like, "What?" And I said, "Look, I'm not trying to step on nobody's toes over here. I'm just saying, this is what I can get paid up to $10 an hour. I've got the research credentials to do it. If you don't want me to come to work there and you don't want to do this, I'll find somebody that will." And it's as simple as that, Jack. We don't have to do this. So if this is too much for you and I'm giving you headache, we could just press the cancel button right now and I'll keep it moving.
Fair.
And then he kind of rolled back and he was like, "No, let me see." I was like, "You come at me hot, I'm going to come at you harder." That's how I roll. You know me. I don't de-escalate anything.
Yeah.
So I went on about my business, and then they figured it out, and I got paid the $10 an hour. But what I didn't know, Chuck, and this is where the other shoe gets the drop, they were supposed to renew it. They didn't renew it. And I was supposed to let them be in control of it because I had messed it up the year prior, right, with all this questioning stuff.
Yeah.
They dropped the ball, and I had nowhere to go.
Oh, wow.
I was jobless. And I tried to figure it out, and I tried to move around, but it was done. It was done, and they just dropped the ball on it. And so I had got an NIH scholarship, and I had some other things worked out. So that was in step one. That I was bold, but then it came back to bite me on the back end.
So can you just delineate how long of a time period of uncertainty that was? I mean, that's obviously a stressful time.
That was, I mean, I got the grant, and I was getting paid for a full 12 months. And then all of a sudden, it was done. And they were actually paying. So the grant was up. And we found out that they were actually draining this guy that I was working with, this PI. They were draining his account without even telling him. So it was like, there's a lot of shadiness. And then that kind of left a really big sore spot in me. And I was very frustrated, and I had a lot of things going on in my personal life at the time. And I was kind of like, I kind of had a chip on my shoulder. And I was like, these people should be recruiting me.
All right.
Why are you fighting?
Yeah.
Right? Like how many people brought you a grant? How many people what more can I do? We got a paper out of the lab. I was doing good work. Things were working. And you just want to take me off the board. So I decided to just roll back, just finish up my classes. But I still had that chip on my shoulder a little bit. And, it was just a rough time. And there was the last class. This is the second one. So this is all in Shreveport. Okay. The last class I had, I needed to graduate, was this ecology class. And and it was not common knowledge that the girl I was dating at the time, that we were together. And because of her family didn't approve, and et cetera. Her family is from the Middle East.
Okay.
And we were taking this ecology class, and we sat together in class. We studied together, but we transferred up together, so people just thought we were just trying to get to med school. And this is what we're doing. And this ecology professor, I did not know this, had a habit of turning people into the dean of students for plagiarism.
Whoa.
And really just going hard after people. And even she made you sign this really weird thing on this cut out piece of paper. It wasn't even like a full page paper. It was like one of these little ribbons of paper about you are not to collaborate or work together on lab projects, and made everyone sign this. And you're like a dumb kid, but I don't know what would happen today if I said I'm not signing that.
Okay.
I don't know. I mean, it's still the academic policies of the campus still apply, whether you sign that piece of paper or not, right?
Right.
So we had these really huge lab, group labs, and just to give you a comparison of how sad this is, the same lab that I'm about to tell you about, I did in 5th grade. We dissected owl pellets. Okay. So, I get it. It's an ecology class. They're doing the best they can. I'm not trying to be condescending towards them. I'm just saying but I did the same lab in 5th grade.
Gotcha. So,
and this is class data. Yeah.
So Okay, so I want to fast forward a little bit to,
Sure.
so you're in DC, like you eventually were working at the NIH, and then you're,
Hold on, Chuck.
yeah.
Yeah, hold on. So I'll fast forward. So this professor accuses me and about 6 other people in the class of plagiarism.
Okay.
Somehow I got on this lady's radar, and she kind of targeted people going to med school. I basically had to go to court, academic court, and defend myself to get my degree.
Wow.
Yeah. And that was something I was doing, put her on my radar, put me on her radar. And me and the other girl at the time were the only people found innocent. And the other 5 people were found guilty.
Whoa. So what were they doing? They were just ripping papers off the internet, or were they finding others?
No. They weren't. No. They worked together and printed out their report together.
I see.
Yeah. And so that's another example of sometimes you can come across too bold. I got on somebody's radar, and I had to even explain that when I matriculated in med school.
No kidding.
By the way. Yeah. So yeah, DC, you wanted to talk about DC.
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, what was the link? So how did you get from where you were to NIH, and then how did you wind up from the NIH into your residency in St. Louis?
Oh, okay. So you want to talk? How did I get from Shreveport to NIH and NIH to St. Louis?
Yeah. Like what was the trigger?
So when the supplement grant failed, I was still trying to. I realized that I was not on track to apply to med school because I had no mentorship. I had no MD mentorship. I was trying to figure this stuff out as I was going along, and I was not doing a great job of it.
Okay.
So I needed time. Okay, I was trying to buy myself time, and I wanted to stay active. And one way I could stay active was I applied to this NIH scholarship program that helped me pay a little bit of my tuition off. And then I would owe them a year of service. And I would go to DC and I'd go work in a lab. And then I was like, my plan was go to DC, study up, get all my stuff together, my package for applications, and then go to med school. That was the plan. Gotcha. So I get there. Every transition you forget that it takes a lot some time to adjust. You lose time. Right. And because it's a big thing. So I get there, I figure out which lab I'm going to be in. And I quickly realized I'm not able to get the times that I need to study. So I needed to come up with a 2nd-year plan to stay at NIH. Did that, got an additional fellowship award, and stayed there for 2 years. And then my things like first year, I'm going to get settled in, get my plan. 2nd year, execute, and then we're gonna knock this out. So I did that, and I had a mentor that works at Eli Lilly. Still, he's like family. He was one of my groomsmen. He's still there. He's still working at Eli Lilly, and he kind of was promoting me coming to Indianapolis for med school. So I did that. And then there's a strong WashU connection between IU and WashU in St. Louis. And that is how I went from NIH to IU to WashU then back to IU.
Got you. Okay. So yeah. You obviously had a varied life experiences compared to the average person that gets into WashU. So what were those first couple of years like before I met you?
Well, we were still in the older building, and there were lots of changes going on. But at every point, whether it was my first time in a research lab or my first time around a lot of medicine, like I didn't have a lot of healthcare experiences really, because I was in the lab all the time, right? Or your first year in residency, like I had no idea what pathology was on a technical level. I knew what on a superficial level what you did, but I had no idea how technical it was. So the first year at WashU, I felt like I was just like trying to figure out which way it's up.
Yep. Yep.
Which way is up? Like, you know, at that time, which I think they've changed it now, at that time, you were on AP services for the first 2 years. And I had no idea how to gross, really. I had seen it a few times. I had no idea how to like really gross things, and you mess things up and you miss things. And, you know, as you know, Chuck, like it was a lot of volume, high volume, both at the scope and in the gross room. And, you know, that first year, I think that you could blink. I can't tell you what happened in it, but it was a lot of hard work. But I don't know what I picked up a lot of.
No, absolutely. Absolutely.
And then the second year, you're like, okay, I got a little bit better. This is a little familiar, but you're still miles away. And then you go off to CP for 18 months, you know, under the system we ran. Yeah. And then I forgot everything when I came out of CP. And then you felt like you were crap. So like it's a lot of 2 steps forward and feels like 4 steps back sometimes. But that pathology, as you know, has a steep learning curve.
No, absolutely. It's quite different than the standard medical trajectory in that it's almost like just hitting the reset button. I mean, all that clinical stuff, it matters. It matters because the only person that can put it all into medical context is a trained physician. But at the same time, interpreting, I mean, your hardcore histology, immunophenotype interpretation, it's a different ball game. And so, yeah, I can totally relate to that. It's you don't know which way is you don't know which way.
I don't know which way is up.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it, man. So
then too deep.
So you also had another unique life situation that I think a lot of people don't appreciate this, but you are in love. You have a beautiful woman that you were keeping a relationship with throughout.
Trying to.
all that stressful, all that stress. You know, it's not an easy life. So could you just maybe shed a little light on what it's like to? I mean, so that's what, like 6 hours away, approximately.
Yeah, it was about 4. I mean, we've been together since 2011, so we both met in med school. And other than the first year of us dating, we have lived some distance apart, at least 45 minutes, and at least a 45-minute drive. And the entire time I was in residency and fellowship, it was a 4.5 hour trip.
Okay.
The one way, so about an 8-9 hour trip round trip to see each other, driving. And I think any time, like, I mean, it doesn't take a rocket science to look at high pressure professions and divorce rates, right? We always hear about them. Like, it doesn't matter what the profession is. If you work a lot, your personal relationships are going to suffer.
Yeah.
And it helps to have somebody who has insight into the healthcare system in some way, like your wife does, so they understand. But it doesn't mean you're going to get a pass,
right? And
so, yeah, me coming back to Indianapolis was a big thing for me to try to maintain our marriage. Right. But for 6 years, and all the first 6 years we were married because we got married when I was at the end of first year residency almost.
Okay,
we lived entirely apart until 2020. So yeah, I mean, first 5 years we were living apart. So I think everybody struggles with the personal side. If you have a relationship, it can be a deep source of comfort, but it can also be a deep source of stress. Just depends on who you're with and what you're going through together. And that's a big message even in medicine in general. You start medicine at one point in your life. There are multiple things people have get married, have children, have families. Some people lose a spouse. Some people lose a kid. Some people there's all these things that happen to you while you're still in training.
Absolutely. It's a long time, and life happens to you. You evolve as a person,
along the way.
and so does your significant other who you're with. You evolve.
Yeah. Yeah. I will say though, if you can, at least this is the part that I have found about it. If you can define your goals together, and you work hard enough, and you're patient enough, and you can be fortunate enough to see those goals achieved together, it's a different relationship than someone just maybe meeting you at the end of all your training.
Ooh, wait. Sam dropping these wisdom nuggets. The audience.
There's nothing wrong with that, because you can't pick when you meet people in life. But if somebody goes through that journey with you,
yeah, I
think they see you and they see life differently.
I agree.
It's kind of like you did it together. They were in it together. And even if you don't make it to the finish line or whatever your finish line is, they still stood by you during that time.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. It's like
stuff wasn't easy.
Yeah. Yeah. Respect, man. It's not easy to maintain for a long period of time. So, I'm just curious, man. I want to know, like, how are things going over the last, 2 to 3 months? How's the new digs?
The new job's great. At an academic center, you're expected to get a higher volume of complex cases, which I'm enjoying, and because you can concentrate those complex cases, your experience in those areas grow really quickly, as opposed to you might only see that type of lesion once a year, maybe, or once a month. And I think that's a kind of a privilege if you're able to sharpen your skills like that. It just makes you a better pathologist. The environment is a lot more calm because I'm not continuously disrupted throughout the day.
Okay.
So I'm able to more, have that time to deal with complex cases. And, yeah.
Can you give an example of like a complex case?
Well, let's put it this way. How many times have you seen a secretory carcinoma, like an endometrial carcinoma of a secretory pattern?
Oh boy,
no. I saw that on my second day.
Oh boy, that's intense.
And I was like, I better find a friend because I'm not diagnosed with that by myself today.
Yeah.
Because you just start getting into stuff like that. And that was just one case,
No, for sure. You had been doing a lot of breast and GYN in general practice, right? So you kind of went into this situation. So is it now more complicated breast GYN, like on steroids, and you're just building on your foundation?
Pretty much. And I'm doing breast and gyne exclusively, whereas in private practice, I was doing more breast than gyne, but I was also getting like head and neck, like thyroid, like simple stuff, but like a lot of benign weird things that from weird places. And then if somebody went on vacation, they were like, okay, well now you're doing GU today. And I'm like, huh? Or you go to a different hospital and it's like, oh, you're on luminal GI. And I'm like, huh?
That sounds about right. Yeah. So somebody leaves for the week and you're like, oh,
yeah,
well, I guess
you're the expert.
I guess I'm doing Hirschsprung's biopsy. Okay.
Yeah. And I was like, and my GI is like so weak. Like, you do not want me doing a lot of GI. Like, it better be like really straightforward. But like that stuff. So there's double-edged swords to that. On one side, you can get really comfortable in a pure subspecialty model and become a great diagnostician within, one or two organ systems. On the other side, your other skills will atrophy. And I have like mixed feelings. I think at an academic center, you probably, it's probably more welcome to have a purist subspecialty model for most places. But in a community setting, you don't need a purist. Because most of the cases may not require that, or if you do, you can kind of hand it off to somebody or hand it out to send it out. But it's a different feeling. Like when you have complexity that's concentrated versus you're just kind of taking all comers and the generals. Again, they're very difficult in very different ways, Chuck.
Okay.
Yeah.
But would you say it's definitely an advantage to have long periods of quiet to do that deep work?
I didn't realize how important that was to me. Like, I thought, I'll say it like this. And towards the end of the previous employment, I advocated for some infrastructure support, and it helped buy me some time. But just, being 911 pathology in a hospital, like that was my phone. It was like 911 path. If anybody that would call you for anything. And it's great to form those relationships and be available for people and help people. And people definitely appreciated that. But it can be very burdensome at the same time. I wasn't very good at striking the right balance. And so I just tried to help people when they needed help. But it definitely suffered in sometimes my productivity, or I was staying very late, or I had to come in on the weekend and clean things up. And like, you just you start running yourself down.
I see.
So
okay.
you need to strike a balance for yourself. And, you're just trying to be helpful, but you're only one person, and, I definitely am enjoying the longer sense of quiet. I can shut my door, zone out, and be in my own world with me and my microscope. And that's where I love to be.
Excellent. Yo, man, so last little point I wanted to touch on. So now that you're practicing in a large academic department, what do you want to improve upon as you move forward in the lab industry?
So I think if anybody talks to me these days, probably for the last 5 years, longer than 5 or 10 minutes, you know what it is. So I'm a big advocate of billing compliance, accuracy, and optimization. And that's what I hope to try to improve. I think it's incredibly, how should I put this delicately? It's incredibly disappointing and very unforgiving that no one formally teaches you how to bill in training. Hardly. We were exposed to it a little bit. Before you got there, Chuck, we would actually manually bill on the back of a piece of paper. Like, we would write it.
Oh, wow.
We did that for the attendings. After some departmental faculty changes, the billing codes became entered when the case was in session. That's a common trend. But you're depending on that coding to be accurate from whoever it sessions it, which is not always the case because they don't know either the information is not in the requisition or it changes based on the diagnosis or the procedure that was performed. And because I got into the billing initially because we are medically legally liable for it. Every physician is fully responsible for billing appropriately. But many of us do not know how to bill appropriately. Many of us don't even know which resources to access to bill appropriately. A great source is from the American Pathology Foundation. APF is the pathology coding handbook.
Yes, sir.
And I just actually got connected with them like yesterday through the academic department. But, it's a great resource. Everything is not always in there. There are definitely gray areas. There are definitely questions. And I think the advocacy part is that we often talk about times where we feel that pathology reimbursements keep going down. You can see that on CMS. Just take a 10-year purview review, and you can see the whole single digit percentage points going down. And that makes it very difficult for private practices and et cetera to maintain, keep doing business the way they're doing business, right? You got to generate the income and you got to do it right. So I think that when you learn how to bill, there's a compliance part, there's an accuracy part, and then there's an optimization part. And we have to be hitting those three and you have to be doing it consistently, and you have to do it evidence-based just as much as your diagnosis is evidence-based. You need to be billing from an evidence-based standpoint. Like if you're billing and changing the billing, you need to be able to point to where you're doing that from.
Right.
Right. And I think that will help people, help us get paid for the work we're doing. Because I always feel like we're already doing the work, Chuck.
No question.
We're doing the work. We're accepting the liability. And I think at times we're leaving money on the table or we're not billing it the right way. So
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. So for the pathologists that might be listening to this, the American Pathology Foundation, just check it out. It's apf.org.
yeah, it's a great resource.
Check it out. I went to that meeting a while ago. Sam, you definitely got to go to that meeting. I would anticipate
You'll see. Yeah, you're going to see me more around and stuff like that.
I'll vote you as president of the APF, man. Like that's your jam. That's what I want to see. Man. I want to see.
I just want to see us get paid for the work we do.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
And I think this is an ethic. This is when your ethics come into play too. You know, I see a lot of pathologists have it was like, well, I don't want to charge the patient for X, Y, Z. I'm like, we are not allowed to just remove billing. Underbilling is also considered fraudulent.
Right.
Right. And so and I never understood this concept too until I was in training. I mean, I did talk a little bit about this to faculty, and they were like, why is underbilling fraudulent? And they think you have a kickback. That's why. They think that you have some, like, you're doing business at a lower rate to drive out other people's business.
Yeah,
that's what.
That's what I'm glad you brought that up. So this is a difference in mindset, and so it's a minority of care that's done through academia. The majority is done at just community hospitals. Now, there's a difference in mindset of people that go into either one. I think you and I are probably somewhere in between. We all go into medicine for service reasons. We just want to be a part of this thing of helping people. But at the same time, if you don't bill what your service is actually worth, then what happens is you can't survive, and medicine becomes increasingly siloed and corporatized. And that dilutes, that commodifies the diagnostic work. It ends up being worse for patients. It's worse for doctors, but we still earn a living, but it's mainly the patients at the most.
And it takes a toll as you as to what type of medicine you want to practice. You may want to practice a certain style of medicine, but you won't be able to because there's not a physician-owned practice that allows you to practice that way. You're going to be practicing medicine on someone else's terms if you do not join a group of people that are like-minded and are about taking care of their business from front to back. I mean, I just saw a slide the other day that it was like literally 40 steps. And when you press sign out on your case, there's like 40 individual subsequent steps that happen to your case from start to finish, as far as from like sign out to getting the money collected. I mean that, and it's incredibly precarious 40 steps. And I just think that, yes, we all are physicians, and we got in this to do a good job. And it is being the highest quality professional, or giving the highest quality professional medical care that you can as a physician, and then billing for the work you do is not mutually exclusive.
Absolutely.
They don't preclude one another. And I think that, we are already doing the work. And a lot of times it's just documentation of how you do it or how you bill it will actually get you paid for it, or get your group paid for it. And I think and some people will say, well, I'm not RVU, so it doesn't matter. That's true. If you're RVU based, you probably would care more than somebody who's not RVU. But my rebuttal to the people who are not RVU based is, if you are understaffed, or you don't have enough support, or you don't have the only leverage you have is to try to generate income to provide additional resources. And there's lots of ways you can try to do that. You can negotiate with hospital for contract, but that's hard to do. But things that you can already do on your own at an individual level is make sure you're billing it right and don't leave money on the table. And on the flip side of that, don't overbill.
Yeah,
don't overbill things. And I think people do it mostly out of negligence, not intentional deceit. They're not, oh, let me bill more for this case. They're just like, I didn't know that fallopian tube was for sterilization because it wasn't on the requisition. Yeah, it's not a bilateral fallopian tube biopsy. That's a tubal ligation, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So it helps to know what the difference.
That's a really important message, man. It's as important as just diagnostic accuracy and just the diligence as a physician.
But it takes more work.
It does.
It takes more work.
It does take more work.
It's more energy.
At the end of the day, like, and this is not a podcast geared towards, politics, but at the end of the day, whether you like it or not, the practice of medicine is a political game, and
everything's political.
It's like it's just the way it is. As soon as you relegate the coding and billing to the government definitions, it now has become a political game. So you got to put on that suit and tie and play that game. And I know the path.
I got to get
you got to get paid, and you're up against killers, man. Like the big insurance companies, the hospital lobby. Everyone's got sheets of skin in the game, and they're very well organized. We're on the side of good. So
and we're not business people. Like I'm getting more. I'm trying to get more of a peeking behind the veil on the business side, and it's daunting and it's overwhelming. I'm like, whoa, and I think that's what as medicine got more complicated with like insurances and requirements and hoops to jump through, pre-authorization, billing, and all that type. Regardless of what specialty, it just got so overwhelming. Like the physicians are like, I just want to practice medicine. Like, don't we all just want to look at slides? Right? I hear that even from like some trainees sometimes when I start talking to them about billing. Well, I'm going to do academics. I just want to look at slides. I'm like, yeah, you are legally required to bill this appropriately.
Yeah, that's pure code, man. Like, I don't buy that. It's that's the biggest. Like, look, you, whether you like it or not, you are a business person. Everything that you do is sales. How you present yourself, the quality of care you deliver, it's all sales. So part of that is making sure that you're billing what you're worth and making sure that they don't keep ratcheting down the reimbursement for your services because you're the only person that could do this.
And they'd advertise it that way. We talk about quality. We talk about quality. Well, where do you think the quality is coming from? Where do you think the quality of healthcare is coming from? It's the physician and other healthcare professionals providing those services on boots on the ground. Like, that's where it's coming from. Like, and I think also, like, when you know that you're doing a good job and you're getting paid to do a good job and you're getting compensated and you feel validation and value from the amount you're getting compensated, it makes you feel good about yourself. I'm doing this good job. I'm going to go the extra, I already go the extra mile so many times, but it feels good going the extra mile knowing that I'm going to get paid well to do so.
And, medicine absolutely must remain a lucrative profession because if it's not, you're going to see a decrease in the quality of people that go into this line of work.
I don't know that many people that are signing up for this journey. And we keep having academic inflation where you keep going to school longer and longer. More fellowships, more this, more that. It's rough.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. These things go in ebbs and cycles, but the last time I checked, which is about a year ago, med school is just as competitive as it was 10 years ago, and they're maxing out.
I think it's more competitive. I always think that as long as the system is being maintained, it's getting more competitive. You can't tell me that the med school class 100 years ago was as competitive as it was today. There wasn't. I mean, when I was applying in 2010, there were almost twice as many applicants as spots, right? And so there's 50,000 people applying to about 20,000 spots. But the quality of those applicants is also increasing. People are doing, I think 2/3 of my class had at least one physician parent. And a third of my class had a master's degree or some other post-baccalaureate training.
Okay.
It's getting more, and that was 14 years ago.
We're thrust into middle age, man.
Oh man, I'm doing Lordy 40 over here. So I think every year it's getting more competitive. It's people are the maintenance of what you have to keep up with today is more.
Yeah,
right?
It's definitely a complicated practice.
We keep adding, we keep changing and adding.
And I think like this next generation, I mean, this is you and me, man. Like we're in this soup together, and like we have to keep pushing and protecting. So I think right now it's only like 10% of pathologists in the U.S. that even contribute to the Path Pack. And that should be.
Oh, really?
That should be.
Yeah, you've been on that.
Yeah, that's like
I contributed one time.
Yeah,
I think I contributed one time.
You just have to give like once a year. It's important because they got to have your address on record so that when we pay the lobbyists to go in and stop the Medicare cuts and other policy changes. They're trying to get LDTs to be switched over to FDA regulation, which would increase the amount of send-outs that we would have to do. It would be very costly for the practice of just
ALTs?
LDTs.
LDTs. Oh, define that for me. I'm blanking.
Laboratory developed tests. So
yes, that's what it is. Yep, I got it.
So basically, they were trying to get those to fall under the FDA instead of CLIA, which would be very costly for just the average hospital.
I don't know. Like that stuff is. And I will say this, there are a lot of different there's a lot of different positions that I feel that pathologists may be in, but, we don't always have the authority, but we have the liability.
Oh,
and
sure, man.
I was a big, I don't think it was a very popular move. Again, Chuck, my boldness and the direct, but I leveraged every bit of my liability in situations to get things done. And it wasn't always nice. And it totally could have got me fired or it could got me removed or whatever it was. But I was like, if I'm the medical lab director and my name is on everything and I'm seeing something not go the right way, I have the liability.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You guys,
you have to leverage what you have because it's the only leverage you have sometimes. I was, you could find yourself between multiple companies, the hospital, the pathology group, this other company, and you're just in the middle of all this, and you do not have somebody who's going to go over there and just hand you, an easy button and say, well, I think we need to do this way, and everyone else in all these different companies is like, sure, that's the way we'll do it. They may not want to, or they may not understand why you need to do it a different way. And what do you have left to use? The only thing you have is your liability. And there's more people being trained to be medical directors that are not physicians.
Yeah,
but they still have to have
that's another.
But they still have to have a medical lab. They have to have an MD or DO to put their name on the document for liability purposes.
Man, we got all kinds of crazy stuff going on in the United States with mid-levels doing it, hemipelvectomies by podiatrists and all kinds of crazy shit.
Who's doing that? Is that real?
Science fiction, man. It's starting to become real.
Tell me that's clickbait. Is that real?
Yeah, these pieces of shit keep moving their way up the leg. Pretty soon they're going to start doing abdominals.
There's a podiatrist that did a pelvic.
No.
Okay.
I'm fucking with you. No, but I'm just saying. That way, it's going that direction.
Is it sad that I had to ask?
Exactly. Because there's a small percentage chance that that's true.
I tell you what they don't want to do, Chuck. They don't want to come to that scope. Ain't nobody trying to get that scope smoke. They say we'll skip that.
Nope.
And we'll go straight to AI.
Yep.
I think there was a group of people for a little bit there when we were in training in the Northeast that talked about pathology assistants doing screening work at the scope for the pathologist. And let me tell you, that shit did not sell. Those PAs are like, I'm going to take my ass back to the grocery room and I'm going to get this stuff working. Because ain't nobody was like, yeah, let me stare at this microscope for 10 hours a day to try to get this competency. No, they weren't trying to do that.
Point and case, man. That alone highlights the importance of...
I think you should change the title to the podcast. Ain't nobody want that scope smoke.
Nobody wants that scope smoke. No, but dude, for sure, it highlights how important it is to be face forward and advocate via our professional organization.
I love our specialty. And I don't think it deserves to be truncated or left out. Or I can't help the fact that we're on the far right end of patient care. You know, there's a lot of steps that a patient has to go through before they get to us. Right. And I can't help that, but it doesn't mean that we're less of a physician.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And anything
we should be compensated.
This is complicated work, and it can only be done by a physician, and it can only be done by somebody who went through the grind of a long residency, because this is highly nuanced stuff. Bro, you already know. I don't have to explain this to you. Like, this is for the audience.
This is for the audience. Let them hear it, Chuck.
Do not read books. I can tell you on a weekly basis. I get a tumor.
Oh, man.
It's community practice. You just get somebody that walks in off the street with a big tumor in their abdomen. Nobody knows where the fuck it's coming from. They just show up and you got this big thing at frozen section. You dissect it the best that you can. You sample the tumor. And then you're like, I think I know what I'm talking about. I think this is ovarian endometrioid adenocarcinoma. And then you go in and then all those immunostains, all these high-speed stains, they just don't turn out the way that you said it. It stains nothing but ovarian cancer. And then you're like, well, it is what it is.
I remember somebody at WashU. You may recall them saying this. In their day, immunohistochemistry was the newfangled, was the word he used. The newfangled technology, and it was like, people were like, I'm a morphologist, but first and always. And then you realize that there was a lot of help immunohistochemistry could do. And then after immunohistochemistry, there was molecular. And then we thought, that they thought at the time that molecular is just going to replace solid tissue biopsies, right? We're just going to our additional saying, like, we're just going to take DNA samples from tumors and we're going to get an answer. Well, we got a lot of answers from that, and that helps us a lot of times when we're against the wall, and it can help find new drug targets and et cetera. I mean, the molecular pathology is great, but it's not a one test to rule them all situation. Right. Then, we're getting into liquid biopsies and people are chasing that down, and that's a different thing. And then we're getting digitized. We're talking about, we're probably going to see in our lifetime digitizing of pathology. And we're going to probably have some type of computer assisted or AI assisted work help us. But I hope that we maintain the driving force, so that we have to adopt it as pathologists, and then we have to be in the driver's seat and let it make us better pathologists as a whole. And there's a lot of places I think you can do AI. You can do AI billing. You can do AI the back end to see errors. You can do AI front end to see errors. You can do a lot of different things. If we want to talk about really drilling down on every tissue, we could, I guess, Chuck, if they wanted to, you could grid out all the tissue and let AI screen it before you get the cleanse.
No, absolutely. And I think there's going to be new skill sets that we're going to have to learn to interface with the technology.
We're going to have to.
And that's billable. That is also billable. So we want.
Well, they just got the new codes. They just got the new codes in earlier this year. I think maybe 2023 or 24. Digitizing.
Right. Computer assisted.
Right. And that's going to help people move that way because nobody was moving towards that. You tell me I'm going to have to digitize the slide, and unlike radiology, it's not going to make me faster. It's not going to make me more efficient, and it's going to cost money. Who's going to do that?
Right.
So we're getting there slowly, but you know how it is with big ships. But
it'll take some time, but that's good, man. We'll figure it out. But at the end of the day, I totally agree with you. This is a great profession. This is a great day-to-day line of work, and if it wasn't for pathology, it allowed me to have a lifestyle that I truly enjoy, that I'm excited about going to work every day because it's never the same, right? It keeps me on my toes. So we're glad we found a profession that we enjoy doing. I think some physicians, unfortunately, out there don't get enough exposure to things that are non-primary care. And they can find themselves in professions that are for specialties of medicine that they just don't enjoy. And you see some of them, they get out and they do other things, and I think they should. Like you need to maintain your motivation. You need to enjoy what you're doing. Absolutely, man.
Because it's hard enough on its own, and it's definitely going to be hard enough if you don't enjoy it.
Most definitely. Hell, that's half the reason I started this podcast, man. I used to be one of those guys. And there's not a lot of information in the form of biography and just telling stories of other people. You learn more. We learn through hearing stories, because you find somebody whose struggles are similar to yours, or maybe there's something about their personality that's similar to yours, and you're like, oh, okay, so I'm not alone in this. So there's somebody else that kind of views the world similarly. Maybe I can structure my journey in that way, or, just borrow lessons.
There's a guy that I'm trying to help along a little bit. He's a medical student, and sometimes we're not always the best medical students or trainees or fellows or whatever it is at that time, and I try to explain that to him. I said, all it means right now is that you are just not culturally aligned with that profession yet, or that thing. But the only thing you can do is keep putting in the time, keep putting in the work the right way, keep seeking out resources, keep seeking out mentors. And if you keep doing that, you're going to get better. And you got to just keep putting one foot in front of the other. There are always going to be people who are just naturally better at whatever. And that's great for them. But I don't know if you've taken a look around in healthcare lately, but especially pathology. There's a large increase in volume and a shortage.
Yeah, dude.
And so we're going to have to get better, and we need more people to get better. And I think in medicine, it was very hard to find mentors sometimes. And in pathology, there were a few mentors I have in different areas, but it's hard. You're going to have to seek people out, and sometimes you might be alone for a while until you find somebody that you click with. But you got to keep putting one foot in front of the other, and you got to keep putting the work in. There's no substitute for the work. And I think if you're in medicine and you're in residency, you have the IQ. You have the talent. You may not be, hitting all of the right things at the right time every day, but you have the talent. So you just need to make sure you're getting the work and the experience and getting that feedback, and keep thinking that one day you're going to be by yourself and you're going to be signing out cases, and you need to be prepared for that. And you just need to keep seeking out experiences and expertise till you get to that point. And when you don't feel comfortable with a case, you need to show people, and you need to ask questions, and you keep learning. I'm still learning. I'm sure you're still learning, Chuck. There's a reason why we're still learning. Our knowledge is not complete, even though that we're, 3, 4, 5 years out of training.
No, it's not complete. It's a journey. You just keep on learning. The residency just kind of gives you the tools, but I think it's like in the beginning, it's important to understand that you don't always have to be the best or the smartest. You just have to outlast everyone.
And you got to be consistent.
You can do that.
Consistency.
Yeah, you can do that. Yeah. You just keep
showing up.
You form the right habits, and you're going to have a good time, because I can tell you what, life, and once you get out into just daily practice, it is night and day better than what you were slogging through back in the trenches in St. Louis. So
there's different fights. That's how I look at it. There were different battles when we were in training, and you're going to have different battles when you're outside of training. And there's a lot of people that say, I just go to work and I just go home. That's great. You need every different type of person. If you're there, you're still helping.
Yep.
Just try to build a little bit better. But if you're there, you're helping, right? Like sometimes I see our colleagues, sometimes we have such a high expectation and demands of ourselves that sometimes we put those on other people sometimes. And you see people kind of going after their colleagues. And I'm like, hey, you should be careful, because if you make somebody upset and they don't want to work with you, or they leave your group or whatever, you might have to start doing some more work. I don't know what you're doing over there. Like we're on the same team here.
Yeah, we are. We are.
We're on the same team. Like
that's very important. I'm glad you brought that up, man. That's a very important.
We're all the same team.
There is a tendency, because I mean, you and I think we're a little bit similar in this. We're a little bit passionate. We're a little bit more direct, and it's important that you don't want to impose your work ethic onto other people. Because if you do that, you got to keep in mind that everyone's different and that you need them.
Everybody's different.
You may not like them, you may not approve of them, but you got to keep that to yourself, because you still need them.
You need your colleagues, and I think some people really underestimate how much you need your colleagues. You need your colleagues for coverage. You need your colleagues to show cases to. When you first get out, you need to show some cases, because you might miss a few things, or you might be stressed, or maybe you had a bad day, or maybe you had to go do. I mean, there was one day, Chuck, I think everybody's had days like this, where like I spent every hour I was called for a frozen, like for 6 or 7 hours straight, and I still signed out 30 or 40 cases that day. So you need your colleagues, because I don't know what it would be like if we were one person down that week. Or you're in a practice that you're covering multiple hospitals, and someone has to go sit at the hospital because they called in sick. You need your colleagues. Try to be nice to your colleagues. And everybody's different, and everybody's got their own stuff going on. And it's just helpful. Like, if you're in a group, try to act like a team. And I hear a lot of times, sometimes people are like, oh, well, so-and-so's competitive. And I was like, I don't know who they competing with. Who they competing with? We're all the same. We made the team. The only people they should be competing with is trying to make sure nobody's taking money off the table. If you want to be competitive, go be competitive in the business aspect of this. But over here, we're just getting the work done as a team. And I think that people could use a little bit more of that.
I agree, man. Yo, Sam, thanks so much for taking time out of your day to talk to us.
It's all good, Chuck.
Yo, man, anytime support. Great conversation.
No worries, and I'm sure I'll run into some meeting this year, because I'm gonna start getting out of my back cave of signing slides out and make it around to some conferences.
Most definitely. Well, it caps in Vegas this year, so that should at least it'll be a little bit warm.
All right, brother. All right. You tell the family I said what's up.
Will do. All right, man. Peace.
Later.
Bye-bye. Great conversation. That's what I love about this podcast, is the ability to not only meet new people, but reconnect with old friends and respected colleagues, and it's like meeting a new person again, because some of these folks I haven't had a chance to talk to in years, but they've been gracious enough to jump on the podcast and share with me their learnings from deep within the catacombs of medicine. So that's all for today's episode of 3 Deeper Cuts, the lifestyle magazine for the practicing surgical pathologist, bringing you high-signal content fueled by 10% buffered neutral formalin. Hope you like listening. If you like this content, subscribe to the podcast at 3deepercuts.substack.com. Substack now hosts podcasts, and I'm uploading them there out of convenience because it's just so easy to use. We're also on iTunes and Spotify and YouTube as audio only. You can also find some raw cuts on 3deepercutsraw.substack.com. And I hope you have an excellent rest of your day, professors. I'm your host, Chuck G. Until next time, be well and stay curious. Bye-bye.